Right, hello. My name is Dr. Neesa. I'm welcoming you to my channel, Creative Feminine Rising, which is a place where women are heeding the call to awaken to the deep sacred feminine within and express that creatively through art and life. And I am with you today specifically to talk to my friend Keyth Neso or Neso. I'm not quite sure how to
Neso,
pronounce you.
yeah,
Neso. Okay, Keyth
Neso.
Neso. Yes, and our conversation today is part of a series of author conversations from our collective book called Call of the Mystical Mountain, Mount Shasta, and the Emerging New Earth. So Keyth has a chapter in this book called The Rise of the Silver Dragon. Very compelling title, and we'll get into that in a minute. But first, I'd like to give Keyth a formal introduction here. So Keyth is a student and teacher of the ancient Nazarene Essene teachings, a certified hypnotherapist using the QHHT modality, a composer of orchestral music tuned to 528 hertz, a pianist, artist, retreat leader, and author. His first book, Essene Tarot, in the ancient Marseille, and his companion deck, the Tarot of the Blue Rose, are ushering in a new age of understanding in regards to the origins of the first edition, Tarot de Marseille, as well as their connection to Nazarene Essenes and the Magdalene Mystery School, also known as the Order of the Blue Rose, which was founded in the south of modern-day France. Keyth's handmade tarot decks have been sold to collectors around the globe. His video series, The Golden Braid, details his journey of spiritual initiation and introduces the teachings of the Nazarene Essenes while providing compelling mathematical data to support the authenticity of the Nazarene scrolls. So, wow, that's all very specific. We are walking down a very specific path here. And as we get into this conversation, Keyth, I want to give you an opportunity to speak to that in relationship to the Rise of the Silver Dragon chapter and how that all relates to Mount Shasta. But I'm feeling to just launch this conversation with an observation that you are a man with a spiritual mission, like you dedicating your entire life now to this mission, where once you were walking in the normal world, you know, with a job and in the music industry, I believe you were.
That's
And
right.
so, wow, like what a transformation. Like what happened there? Maybe give
Well,
us a little bit of a sense of that journey.
I feel like maybe it wasn't a certainty that I would assume this role. Like I was maybe supposed to sit on the bench and watch the game a little bit more. And now I'm quarterback of a team, so to speak. So I don't really, that's just something that I feel within me. But we all know there's multiple timelines and infinite possibilities, and that we have free will, and that we can kind of choose what we want to take on or not. But I was obviously encoded for the mission I'm now on, but I don't think it was 100% guarantee that I would say yes to it or remember it or recognize it. So I'm really grateful that it happened, even though it did radically change my life. Um, Everything I thought that I wanted to be and everything I thought that my life was going to be was just dissolved. It just completely disintegrated, and it was really like a death. It was like a mourning of a death, because I did achieve a certain level of success in that former life in the same body, as I like to say. But I did work with #1 artists, and I did get my name on records. I was in a Times Square recording studio, slicing tape with razor blades and producing records, and I ended up even teaching at the university I dropped out of. I taught sound recording production, after the wave of success that I had. But back then, this would have been early mid 2000s, 2005, 2006. It was kind of like I climbed a burning ladder, because that's when the music industry was really imploding on itself, especially the big studio model of which I was a part, recording large ensembles with, you know, big studios and big price tags and all of that. That was just going away. So my ego had to go away with it, and it took a while for my ego to really express itself, but it did through that success that I had in the music business, and it needed to be destroyed. So yeah, I explained this in the Golden Braid, but my awakening came through a recording client. He was actually a contestant on American Idol, and he's a very spiritual person, and we had a very unexplainable relationship. And he disappeared for about a year and a half out of my life, and then came roaring back into my life when I was at a very dark place. And said, "I'm taking you on a 10-day juice fast in the desert." And I said yes. And that's when this stuff started happening. That's when I was really properly introduced to the tarot and saw firsthand that the cards can deliver messages that are needed to be heard. It's when I first really started engaging with spirit in a way that wasn't through skepticism and or agnosticism. Really, I guess I was really agnostic at that time. I knew something bigger than myself existed, but I really didn't care. So that ushering in of my awakening through a 10-day juice fast popped me wide open. I was on sacred land, and shamanic voices were coming out of me. Negative spirits were leaving my body that had, you know, been hounding me since early childhood that I was unaware of. And just my whole perspective of reality shifted during those 10 days. So that was the fork in the road, so to speak. And once my curiosity for the spiritual information was whetted, there was no, it was insatiable. So it was like a dam breaking, and I was just immersed in the floodwaters of the 99.999% of reality that we can't see, taste, smell, hear, or touch with our five senses. And that path has, looking back on it, I see that I was being led to a certain place, but when you're going through those twists and turns, you don't know that it's ending up in a place or that it will make sense. So I just remember being pulled this way and then pulled that way, and then study this esoteric information. Okay, now here's this. And then eventually it all began to braid together. That's the golden braid where it started. Now it's becoming a whole woven tapestry. But Mount Shasta was a very significant part of that, the twists and turns and calling me, and me learning to trust those intuitive calls without fear, and to say yes to them, and to show up even though it makes no sense to myself or my family or anyone around me, but to still go, and to still say, I will go when you hear, because we have the choice not to.
Right.
So yeah, it's I'm at the end of a 7-year cycle now, that when this all began in 2017. And it just happened, if you believe in coincidence, I don't. It just happened to coincide with the 2 solar eclipses that crossed the United States of America. So that's when it began, was right around that first solar eclipse. And then this first of what I assume will be many 7-year cycles, the first closed this last year in 2024. So now it feels like, okay, say that again.
How did you experience that? Does something feel different now than it did before that?
Yeah, it feels like it just feels like initiations were passed. I passed some certain tests, because now the information that I'm sharing is allowed to be shared, especially on the internet, where it wasn't before. It was very heavily suppressed. And it feels like my mission is clear to me now. It's no longer hanging in the unknown. It feels very clear. All of those dangling threads have been woven together. So it just has more substance to it. It's not as ethereal or as ephemeral, ethereal, whichever word makes more sense.
Okay.
It just has more substance. It's more
Yeah,
realized. I have more of a grasp of what it is I'm here to do and why I had to go through everything I went through to get to this point. And now it just feels like, these interviews, I'm doing podcasts, people are seeing what I've written, people are seeing the information that I'm here to teach. So it just feels like the the doors are opening to the next cycle, whatever that entails.
right. Well, that's exciting.
It is
So
exciting.
yeah, this path of the spiritual journey, and for those of us who have said 100% yes, like this is what I'm doing with my life. It's kind of scary and rocky at times, isn't it?
Very,
So
very
I
much so.
I want to hear a little bit about that, like the sort of diciness, if you will, of this task that you feel that you are being given to carry.
Mm. Well, so I was tested a lot before the book came to me, which is called the Holy Megillah, the Nasserean Bible of the Essene ways. It's the Essene Bible. That came to me about 5 years after my journey began. Is that true? No, it started in 2017. So it was about 3.5 or 4 years actually until the book came to me. But the first thing I had to do was find the first edition ancient Tarot de Marseille, which is the first edition of the tarot known to man. The earliest it can be traced back is 1471, but no one knows the true origin until now, I believe. We're uncovering where it comes from due to this book. So the blue rose was guiding me through all these magical synchronicities, which I didn't understand. And then Dolores Cannon came in, and I was immediately drawn to her amazing body of work. She wrote 20 books over 45 years, and her first book was Jesus and the Essenes. So that was my introduction to the Essenes, the first time I'd ever heard of them. And this was in parallel to me making hand drawing the ancient Tarot de Marseille line by line, as if I was a student in mystery school copying a sacred scroll by hand. Your cells understand the information. So through all of this time, I was going through extreme financial hardship, extreme poverty, and I didn't know that these things would connect. I just knew I had to do them. I was also a classical piano major, and I was studying tuning of pianos at that time. And so Nikola Tesla is one of my strong guides who very strongly resonates with 369 and the mysteries of the universe that can be expressed in that numerology of the Trinity of Trinities of 3, 6, and 9, and how they're a key to the universe. So when I was tuning, I got into the numerology of music tuning and how frequency affects us on a molecular level, and psychoacoustic frequencies, and all of the esotericism that goes into the everyday things that maybe we don't realize are full of spiritual mysticism. The music that we listen to every day, the words that we speak, the vibration of everything. And then in retrospect, I was like, wow, all of that time I spent at the recording console, putting up microphones and listening to how sound bounces around a room, and how to sculpt with frequency and use equalization and compression to mold the sonic spectrum. It was like building with frequency. Because when you mix a record or mix a song, it's like they call it a sound engineer, because you're engineering structure with sound, with oral information. So all of that, I believe, is connected. And I think there's more connections that will come down this path that I've agreed to solidify all the different chapters of my life, and more coagulation, more what's the word, more integration of all of the rabbit holes and twists and turns that I've gone down. I think there's even more connections to come. So then when the book showed up, which came to me through a reading in Sedona, again, I heard very strongly, I was living in Southern Arizona, I heard go to Sedona, and I went,
Wait,
and
let me interrupt you for a second. because I want the audience to know what is this book that you're talking about that showed up and
Well, sure. I have it to
the
hand.
content and the messaging and what is that about?
Yeah. So the book is called The Holy Megillah, the Nasrian Bible of the Essene Way. And it's a book that you couldn't purchase when I received it. So after drawing my cards for a year and a half, I said, well, I'm obviously doing this for a reason. I should try reading for people. And I was terrified to do it, but I did. I made up a little free tarot sign and I put it up at a cafe. And my second reading was for a struggling heroin addict. And she didn't have any money to give after the reading because I do everything on donation. But she wanted to give me something, and she gave me this blue rose pin. And I had no idea what it meant. This was in 2017. And then I found Dolores Cannon's work, which I read her book Jesus in the Essenes, and that reintroduced me to Yeshua and his energy without all of the unpleasantness that I experienced in my religious upbringing. And Dolores Cannon would use the keywords in her hypnosis sessions, blue rose. And she said in her training, I don't know why, but whoever says those two words together. And I remember I was like, wow, a blue rose. And that girl gave me a blue rose. And then,
Ah,
yeah, and then in Sedona, years later, this was in November in 2020, I was doing readings at a cafe. And this young woman was sitting next to me for hours watching my every move. And I finally got a break. It was like 15 readings in a row. It's just a lot, so much energy in the room. And she was just watching every moment. And I finally got a little break and she leaned over and she said, I love your cards. Where did you get them? I said, well, thank you for asking. It's the Ancient Marseille. I handmade them, copying line by line from the oldest edition tarot known to man. This is my second deck right here that I do all my readings from. And it was the deck I had in Sedona that day. And I said, I don't know how I know this, but the Tarot de Marseille, Marseille is a town in southern France. And Mary Magdalene is rumored, we'll say, to have landed at Sainte Marie de la Mer, the caves in southern Gaul, which is modern day France, which is right near the modern town of Marseille. So I just knew, I said, I don't know how I know this, but somehow this deck of cards is somehow attached to Mary Magdalene in the Essenes, is what I said. And her eyes just got as big as saucers. And she said, did you just say the Essenes? I said, yes. And she goes, how do you know about them? I said, Dolores Cannon, Jesus in the Essenes. And she goes, who's that? I said, how do you know about the Essenes? So she said, well, I was at a music festival and this man approached me and said, I don't know why I feel drawn to invite you to this 3-day gathering in Oregon, but there's an Essene church in Oregon and I feel very guided to invite you. And she said she had no idea what she was in for, but she went and it was the most amazing 3 days of her life. And then tears started to fall out of her eyes. And she said, I've been seeing roses for 2 days and now I know why. She goes, come see me in the parking lot when you get a break. So I went out to the parking lot and she told me a little bit more of her story. And she goes, I have something for you. And she went to the trunk of her car and she brought this book wrapped in this red cloth. And the red cloth here, it was covered in blue roses that look exactly like the one that was pinned to my bag. I mean, they're almost identical. And
wow.
I still didn't know what it meant until I finally got the book home with me. And she said, when she gave it to me, I tried to refuse it. I was like, have you read this? And she's like, about half of it. I said, I can't accept this. And she goes, no, it's for you. It's yours. It's for you. And she said, don't put it on the internet. They have a strict no internet policy. And I said, I won't. And so I took it home and I read it over the next month. This would have been November, December 2020. And I was just amazed at how many passages in this book are exactly what was written by Dolores Cannon through her investigative work using regressive hypnosis. And she was obviously working with the Essenes because her first book was Jesus and the Essenes. But I got to page 560, which is toward the end of the book, and I was reading the footnote, and it said, it is also the address for the modern Essene Mountain of Peace Mystery School, linked to the Essene Order of the Blue Rose and its inner circles, the red rose and the white rose. So finally, three and a half, 4 years later, something like that, from spring of 2017 to the end of 2020, I finally understood what all these blue roses meant and why Dolores Cannon used blue rose. She used blue roses on her promotional posters, why I got the blue rose pin. It was Mary Magdalene leading me to the Order of the Blue Rose and the Essenes. And also, it was the beginning of my task of taking the magnificent 45-year career of Dolores Cannon and the books that she wrote. That's one of the golden strands. The ancient Tarot de Marseille, this brilliantly encoded deck of cards that is so full and rich of esoteric, mysterious symbolism and numerology. And then the crown jewel was the Holy Megillah. So those are the three golden threads that were given to me that I grabbed a hold of, not knowing that they connected. And then as I finally assumed this role and understood and got the downloads and cleaned myself enough to be able to glean what was right in front of me, I'm able to weave those three strands together into the golden braid, which is much stronger on its own than the three strands just flinging and, flapping in the wind by themselves. Now they're anchored.
Yeah, so amazing. So amazing.
Thank you.
So with those three things and how they are coming together to essentially express the teachings of the ancient Essenes. And the Magdalene connection, help me with that. What's the Magdalene
Well,
connection?
this is the book that Joshua and Miriam taught from. This is it way predates them. It goes all the way back to the beginning. And this is the only holy text that I found that forbids all blood sacrifice, animal and human. And it's also the only holy text where the masculine and the feminine are absolutely equal. And it's the balance of the masculine and feminine coming together that is source. That's it. It is the union of the masculine and feminine polarities is what creates life. So both Joshua and Miriam, this book describes them as the Lord and Lady Christ, and they are co-messiahs and they are eternal. They're eternal partners. They are the mother and father of all beings in this side of the veil. They have a mother and father, God and Goddess transcendent. This would be Father, Mother, God. They're the son and the daughter of Father, Mother, God, but they're the mother and the father of all other beings come through their union, their embrace. So this was the book that they taught. A deck of cards is mentioned in the book. So
Okay.
a Nazarene
That
deck
was
of
my
cards.
next question. Yeah.
So that was big. When I read that, I was like, well, there it is, a deck of cards. And the deck of cards is called the Kashab in this book. And Kashab means to prick up your ears, as in pay attention, important information incoming. So that solidified that Mary Magdalene had this deck of cards with her when she floated across the Mediterranean after Joshua's crucifixion and landed in the south of France, where she established the Order of the Blue Rose.
Yeah, now I had never heard of the Order of the Blue Rose prior to meeting you. So how do we know about the historical facts around that in the south of France?
Well, there's something, I have more research to do, but there's something about Cathar, the Cathars, and there's something about Joan of Arc there, all the energy there. For me, the historical fact is that the Order of the Blue Rose is mentioned in this book. And the reason I put so much faith in the Holy Megillah and why it's my foundation of truth and my spiritual keystone is because of the 369 codes that are embedded within it. That goes into gematria and alphanumeric codes. And again, Nikola Tesla, his famous quote is, if you understood the magnificence of the 3, 6, and 9, you would have a key to the universe, or of the numbers 3, 6, and 9, you would have a key to the universe. So again, I was studying all of this information independently. And then I love the quote. I can't remember whose quote it is, but someone said, genius is finding the hidden link between things. because I don't think the
Mm.
absolute truth can't be expressed in a book. It's the truth is multidimensional. It's cramming it down into 3D is impossible. So in order to really glean what we call the truth, it's like a crystal. It's like this multifaceted, multidimensional transmission. And I found these invisible links between all of this material, and that's all verified through mathematics and through 369 vortex math, numerology, and the alphanumeric code of gematria. So this is really deep stuff that can't really be explained in a half hour. But if anyone's interested in this, if it's tapping you on the shoulder and you're something saying you need to research this, this is why I made the Golden Braid video series, which is a 3-part series. And part 2 discusses gematria, how it works, how you can access it yourself, how you can enter in phrases, see the numbers that are calculated from the Jewish and the English processes, and then scroll down to see the banks of phrases that match those specific numbers. Because when you start to do this research with the gematria codes, you start to get pattern recognition, and you start to see things that can't be otherwise seen. And it's hidden in codes. And we resonate with them in a way that is multidimensional and not confined to the earth body with 5 senses, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, we'll be sure to put some of your links underneath
Sure.
this video when it's
Great.
But I would like to take a leap here to Mount Shasta. So
Yeah.
you wrote a chapter in the Call of the Mystical Mountain, and there's a clear relationship between this passionate path that you've been talking about so far and how your call to the mountain, has, shall we say, furthered that or amplified your mission. I
Yes.
know you have a funny beginning to your story about a
The
chocolate
chocolate
bar.
bar. Yes,
Yeah.
I was in the recording studio. I was chief engineer at a $3 million recording complex in the hill country of Texas. And I happened to be recording a project, and it was for a Grammy nominated world music artist who's a Native American medicine woman who lives in Mount Shasta. I think she'll be okay with me saying her name. Her name is Gentle Thunder. And as a gift, she brought me a chocolate bar from Mount Shasta. And I remember that was the first time I ever saw the image of the mountain on the wrapper of the chocolate bar. And I just remember, like I said, my soul recognized something that I didn't understand yet. That was in 2008, and I didn't go to Mount Shasta for the first time until 2017, in September 2017. So Shasta had to spoon feed me her energy because, Mama Shasta is very powerful. She's a wonderful teacher, and she's very patient. And she only gives you what you can handle, as any good spiritual teacher knows. They can only give the student as much as they're ready to handle. So I had a few little Mount Shasta encounters before it really opened up for me. And all that's really detailed in my chapter. But I wanted to in the Nasserean New Testament of the Holy Megillah, which is called the Holy God Spell, the first time I read this passage in chapter 3, I got full body chills. And if I may, it says, at the start of each millennium, the high priest will raise up a circle of light, a small revealed church. And from that holy remnant, the warrior high priest will select and train a cadre of lions. And within the order of lions shall be an order called the Apostles of the Holy Megillah. And these apostles will take the Holy Megillah from town to town, sounding the Kara HaKodesh, the holy call. Yea, they will travel from town to town, living on the offerings of those who receive them, for such is the way of the apostle. So when I read that, my body started vibrating, and I was like, this is what I am. This is who I am. The song, the holy call that they mentioned, is done with a frame drum, a shamanic frame drum. Joshua had a wooden flute in this book. He wore a tree of life pendant. So after my 10-day fast in the desert of my awakening, the first thing I ordered from Czechoslovakia was an Organite Tree of Life pendant that I usually wear it, but it's upstairs hanging. In Mount Shasta, my dear friends Wayne and Sophie at Heartlight gifted me a free frame drum that she handmade. And she didn't know this at the time, but the drum she gifted me that she handmade was sitting next to a copy of this book, which she's unable to read because she doesn't have English. She can't read English. The drum she gave me was sitting next to this book. Gentle Thunder gifted me a wooden flute that I still love to play. So it's like all these things were coming to me that made no sense at the time until I'm reading, oh, these are the tools that the people that they're describing in this book use for missions such as these. So when I began leading study groups, and remember, I made an oath not to share this information on the internet because it's strictly forbidden to share this information on the internet. So I made it, if I'm supposed to share this book, I started organizing small study groups. I'd travel around the country. And this is with no money. This is with my tarot sign and my tarot deck. And this is just trusting. And I did this for 3-4 years, traveling on blind faith with less than $200 pretty much all the time in my bank account, and using cash and just donations. And miracles would happen everywhere I went. I would bring this book with me and I would meet someone and there was eye contact, and a conversation would happen. Oh, I just bought an inn in town and there's a room with a twin bed and mattress. You can stay there for 3 weeks. It was just amazing how this stuff continued to happen. But I've read this book over 17 times now. I've been reading it over and over again with individual students and leading study groups. And it was during this time, it would have been early 2021. Yeah, it was spring vernal equinox of 2021. I was in Sedona again. And I very strongly heard the call from Mount Shasta. And she said, bring me that book. Bring me that book and lead a ceremony on the mountain to anchor the teachings into Mount Shasta, and I will broadcast and transmit what you bring. So she told me to come on summer solstice in 2021 and to bring the book and lead a ceremony. So my chapter, Rise of the Silver Dragon, is about that ceremony that I led on Mount Shasta on summer solstice of 2021 to bring this specific book to Mount Shasta at her call.
Yeah, well, we would love for people to be able to have the experience of reading that. So that book is available digitally currently on Amazon.
It's not on Amazon. It's another story for another day, but I secured permission from the copyright holder and the translator. This book has been being translated for over 40 years from copies of ancient sacred scrolls. It's taken a team of translators, and it's been this man's life's work. His name is David Owen. He also goes by Day of Greenleaf. He is the official copyright holder, the high priest of the official Essene Church in Oregon. He's the publisher of this book. He's the one that said there's a strict internet and copyright warning. And it took a whole lot, but I got permission to share this online. And as far as I know, I'm the first and only person that was given that authorization to share this early version, because the book is still being translated. There's new chapters still being translated from the scrolls. So the final book will be ready in about a year from now. And there are subsequent versions from this early green copy. The first green copies were only printed for his students. This was an early printing. And it's a miracle that it found its way to me. What are the odds? 100%. The Blue Rose was in control. But that very special woman who had the book and gifted it to me, covered in blue roses that night in Sedona, it was very much meant to be, because I feel that it's really important that this book and that the frequency of the teachings are now in the digital realm. I think AI now has a chance to read this book. And if AI is a species and humans are to teach it, I believe that making this information available to it could very well steer humanity and its relationship with other intelligences off world and now on this world into a better direction.
Yeah, what a beautiful perspective on AI. So I was actually referring to buying the Mount Shasta book so people could read your chapter in
Oh
there.
yeah, that book too.
They know
Yes, yes,
about how to get the whole Gila too. So
that book is on
yeah,
Amazon, and please go buy it and read it. Yes, absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. Anyway, so here you are. You've been to Mount Shasta a couple of times. You found out about it on a chocolate bar that an artist gave to you. And you went back and forth a couple of times. And in fact, when I met you, you were literally like camping on the mountain all summer. So there's something
And
very
that
powerful
that's
for
what I did
you
after this first ceremony that's described in the
after the
chapter.
ceremony.
I didn't
Okay.
know that I was going to be staying there all summer at the ceremony site, but one of the healers and the shamanic healers that participated in the ceremony was when we were leaving, he was like, stay as long as possible. He said, when you sleep on a sacred site, it's like 1,000 hours of meditation, and the mountain's asking you to stay as long as possible. So that was when I had like this amazing summer of sleeping on the mountain in a tent and living as a natural, living very naturally as much as possible. And I couldn't get enough of it. And so I go back, you know, I've been back almost every summer in Mount Shasta. That's my summer paradise. It's
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
preferred way of living is in nature in summer in Mount Shasta. So my ultimate dream is to winter in Hawaii and summer in Mount Shasta, but we'll see if that's
There
what
you
they
go.
want me to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, okay, so you get called to the mountain, you're in Sedona, and you hear this calling to go to Mount Shasta and bring the book and have a ceremony. So I know from reading your chapter myself, you personally had a huge release and revelation and letting go and making right your sense of how you have participated in wronging the planet and her living creatures.
Yeah.
So how did that change you? You know,
Oh,
what came from the others?
well, I'm getting emotional. Thanks for that. Uh, when I drove to that ceremony, I was in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, 4 or 5 days before that ceremony. To the point where I was like, "Am I really going to make this?" And I was like, "No, I have to go. I have to go. I have to go." The people that were showing up for the ceremony were saying no, and then other people were. It was just all the way spirit is, really random, and it can be perceived as a bit chaotic. But so I had to drive from Arkansas through Texas, spent the night at my apartment in Bisbee, Arizona, and then drive up to the mountain all in about 3 days, 3 or 4 days. And I remember the dove in this book. The lamb is Yahshua, and the dove is Miriam. So the lamb is the masculine, and the dove is the feminine, the animal representations of the Lord and Lady Christ. And at 2 or 3 in the morning on the dark back roads on my way back to Bisbee, I remember I hit a dove, and I killed a dove with my car. And it killed me. And all of that just started coming up. And I guess what I was experiencing in that moment that you're talking about, that release, that owning of everything, it was realizing how tricked humanity has been into the ways that we operate, the way that we treat the animals, the way that we treat the trees, the way that we treat each other, the way that we treat ourselves, the way that we treat the air, the way that we treat the water. And I just felt how I was deceived into participating into all of that and how I contributed to it. And then I felt that in everyone else, knowing that not many will have the opportunity of revelation that I had. And I say that from a place of complete humility, but I was just like, wow, not everyone's going to realize how badly they've been fooled. And I just felt the weight of that. And I just wanted to apologize. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. And I did it for me. And what was coming out of me in that moment, as people were staring at me in the dirt on a blanket, was just let me apologize for those who are unable to understand, those who can't understand, those who won't understand. It doesn't matter. Just put it on me. Let me clear it. Put it on me. Let me apologize for them. Whatever I can do with this knowledge, with this, whatever I can do with what you've shown me, let me, and I will. And it was an extremely powerful moment, extremely powerful. And it was after that the sky just turned bright purple, and other people were seeing the stuff that I was seeing through closed eyes. And then one of the participants of the ceremony, this is in the chapter, pulled me aside and said, I have to tell you something. And I said, well, please go ahead. And she said, a red dragon came to us during the ceremony. And I was like, okay, interesting. I had just read the Sophia Code, so I was really interested in dragon energy at the time. And she said, well, a red dragon came to us. And I said, well, what did we do? She said, well, it came out of the mountain. It came out of the mountain, and it felt like it had snuck away. And it felt like it had to get back before it was noticed that it was missing. And it was just uneasy, but it was very interested in what we were doing. It was drawn to what we were doing energetically. And she said, and then we all stood in a circle around this red dragon, and we poured metaphoric silver all over its body. And I was like, wow, that's so interesting. I was like, thank you for sharing that. I didn't know what it meant. So up until that point, the only version of the book I had was this green one that was gifted to me in Sedona. But one of the participants who had been reading the book with me, one of my students, had one of the newest copies that had additional chapters. And he brought it with him, and I was dying to read these new chapters. So the day after this woman told me this about the red dragon, all the ceremony participants had left, and I finally had a chance to read the new material. And I got to chapter 53. My book only goes up to chapter 49, the green one. And chapter 53 was a sermon by Yahshua about dragons. And he said in the chapter that black dragons and red dragons are the most vilest of the creatures. And the red dragons are very submissive to their partners, the black dragons. They're very dominated. And I remembered her saying that it felt like it snuck away and had to get back before it noticed it was missing. And it said that even though the dragons are the vilest and most cunning of the evil, what we call evil negative creatures, they do repent. And when they repent, black dragons become golden dragons and red dragons become silver. And my jaw just dropped. My jaw dropped because my favorite way that spirit works with me is that they give me an experience that I can't explain, that I don't understand. And then shortly after, once I pass whatever initiation they've given me, they give me the information that confirms what happened was real. I feel like that's what happened to me with the blue roses, with the cards, and this is what happened with the red dragon. So one of my participants said a red dragon came to us and we poured silver on it. And then the very next day I read in the Holy Megillah that red dragons repent and become silver when they do. So that told me that the ceremony that Mount Shasta called me to lead with this book on summer solstice of 2021 aided in the repentance of a red dragon, and the energy of our circle did something very, very profoundly magical and amazing and powerful in terms of repentance.
And your own act of atonement is very, very potent.
Yeah.
So somehow, you're doing that was allowing a broader field to
I agree
also
with that.
be as per the dragon, and who knows what else. Who knows what else was actually going on there, you know, for the
Who
collective.
knows? Yeah,
Yeah,
I thank you. Thank you for that insight. That feels very resonant with me. Another
yeah.
person who read my chapter said, "I wonder if the red dragon was an aspect of you." And
Well,
I thought
yeah.
that was,
So of course,
yeah,
I mean, that's layered in here too, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
you obviously were being purified, as was the image of this dragon. And we could go on and on about dragons and what they're all about. But what I'd
yeah.
like to do is just kind of bring this conversation to a close by talking about the mountain herself and your relationship to the mountain and kind of how you see Mount Shasta as a relevant player in the birth of a new earth.
She is the bubble that holds the Lemurian template that was untainted by all of the things that I felt the need to apologize for. Um, she's the keeper of the codes. She's the keeper of the codes for New Earth. She preserved them. And she's so powerful and such a mighty protector. And
Mhm.
I think there are fierce spiritual battles taking place inside of Mount Shasta. I think
Hmm.
um, I think it's impossible for the inner circle to be penetrated, but I don't think the things that we're attempting to penetrate it know that fully. So I just see her as this extremely knowledgeable, fierce protector in such a subtle, subdued way. It's like the Mississippi River. It's like it doesn't look like it's moving on the surface, but if you threw a stick, it would be moving pretty quickly. It's like she has this churning power that's invisible.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think I Adam in this book of this Adam and Eve story, which is corroborated by what Aurelia Louise Jones wrote in her Telos books. Um, Adam in this book is referred to as Adama, which means soil. So I believe Adama, who is, according to those Telos books, the high priest of the Lemurian city inside of Mount Shasta, I believe he was Adam of Adam and Eve, the Nasrian
Hmm.
Adam and Eve. And I believe that the Lemurian light body, the codes, this book, Nikola Tesla, these cards, I think all of that um, fits together. I think all of that is connected. And I think that all of the mysteries of how it connects are unraveling right now. And I believe Mount Shasta is the portal. I read somewhere, I can't remember where, I read that inside of Telos, there's a portal to the great central sun. And the great
Wow.
central sun, according to the Holy Megillah, is the birthplace of the mother ovum, which is the multiverse, everything in existence. And it's also the temple of the Lord and Lady Christ. It's where mother, father, God, goddess emanated direct emanations of themselves, one being Yahshua, the other being Miriam. That's where they were emanated, is the great central sun, the point of the Big Bang, the point of Simsum. And I don't remember where I heard or read that there's a portal to the great central sun inside of Mount Shasta, but it stuck with me because it resonates. And I do believe that's why that mountain is so sacred and so protected. And I do believe that access to that portal is what all of the battle has been about. And I don't know if there's another portal to the great central sun on our planet Earth. I don't think so. I'm feeling that there isn't. I'm feeling that that's
Hmm.
Mount Shasta's role, is to hold the Lemurian codes for New Earth, to preserve them for when humanity, with its free will, chooses to reach the frequency at which they can access and understand and utilize those codes.
Wow, beautiful. Yeah, that's a lot to chew on. So
Yeah.
we'll just wrap it there and allow listeners to just sit with all of that, because it's very vast and way beyond the norm of the human mind to comprehend and take all of that in. So it's really about the heart, and listening from this space and understanding where does it land here. 'Cause as I understand it, the definition of the fifth dimension is operational from the heart frequency, and
The
that
heart
is
space.
what is said, that this telos is operating on fifth dimensional principles. And actually,
And according to these teachings, that is the return of the divine feminine, because
mm,
the masculine charge is the electric intention from the brain, but the magnetic emotion, the attractor, is the feminine, and we are electromagnetic. So the
yeah,
world that
well,
we've
there's
grown.
more to that conversation. We could go into that another time,
Yeah. All
about
right.
the feminine, what defines the feminine. So
Yeah.
anyway, we'll close up for now, and thank you, Keyth, and
Thank you, Neesa,
may
very much.
find its way right where it needs to go.
Well, bless you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the
Okay.
conversation, and thank you for bringing this
Yeah.
book into physical form.
Yes. Yes. Yes.